What the fuck?
You a dead meat slime bag!
Welcome to the Dave Cave. I, as always, am Dave. Now, before we get started, stay on top of all things horror and a little bit of heroes, like reviews, rants, rankings, and reactions. Hit that subscribe and ding the bell so you don't miss a minute. Today we are talking a slasher movie that took their title from a Muppets movie, and that, of course, is Friday the 13th, Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan. Part 8 was directed by Rob Hedden, stars Jensen Daggett as Rennie, the final girl, and then returning as Jason yet again, Kane Hodder. The basic story for Part 8 is after being pulled in the lake at the end of Part 7, again, another indeterminate time after, Jason is brought back from the dead after an anchor hits a power line that Jason is laying on. It electrocutes him, brings him back to life, and then he gets on this boat, kills the couple kids that brought him back, and randomly decides to hop on this senior trip that's setting off for Manhattan. Yeah. I honestly couldn't tell you how many times I looked at the screen during this movie and just sat there what? But since there wasn't much to say for it, let's just get right into the good. For my first entry in the good column, it's Jason, yet again making his return to the good column, and even then that's 90% of the time. We're going to talk about the other 10% later, but for right now, I liked how he looked. The look was good again. You have the waterlogged, kind of decayed look, even more so than it was in Part 7. I like that. I like the attention to that. It was a little over the top that he was gooey, but I dug it. I like that it shows that he's from the deep, that he has risen from the gooiness of being at the bottom of a lake, and he's just funky and even more decayed. I like that. I like how he looks in this one. And then on top of that, like I said, you have Kane Hodder coming back as Jason, and I really like Kane Hodder moving as Jason. So you have his style of kills, his style of movement. Jason was really the one thing that I could depend on through this movie to be solid. Well, rather, the way Jason was played. And for my second entry in the good column, I'm going to piggyback a little bit on Jason, in that it's the kills. I like the kills in this movie. Not all of them are great, but they're inventive, they're well done, and I like them for the most part. We obviously have a whole section devoted to that, so we're going to talk about that later, but I like them. For the first time in this review series, I actually do only have 2 things in the good column. I don't like that. So, yeah, let's just get right into the bad. My first entry in the bad column is Teleportation Jason. It happens a lot in this movie. I think 5 or 6 times that really stood out to me. The first of which is the JJ kill. So he's chasing her, and she runs down some stairs further into the ship. And Jason's miraculously in front of her with a guitar, one-ups her in the face. Cool kill, overall. Cool kill, but, And then a bit later, you have Jason and Miles fighting on top of the ship after the boys decide to be a little bit vigilante. They take some weapons, go after Jason. Miles runs from Jason, and then Jason's down in front of him. Holy shit. And then Miles goes up the ladder, and instantly Jason's right behind him. Grabs him, throws him off, he gets impaled. What? It happens during the Ava kill, it happens during the McCullough kill, and it happens after the cop kill. He just moves around. They don't care where he's supposed to be or where it logistically makes sense. He can be here, he can be there. In the Ava kill, he's turning around, and he's there, and he's there, and he's there, and he's there, and he's there. It's like, I understand Jason getting around fast. I get that. He could be anywhere because he gets around. But that shit was instant. That was like Nightcrawler moving around in that fucking movie. And anytime that it happened, it took me out. The very little that it had me, it would take me out in those moments. I'd be like, oh, great, well, that doesn't make any fucking sense again. For my second entry in the bad column, this kind of piggybacks again on the first one. It's the suspension of logic. And that's not just the suspension of logic of the people. It's also a suspension of logic of the movie. The first one that really stuck out was that after everything that happens on the boat, they rowboat their asses to New York City, which, side note, takes an hour of runtime to do. Jason Takes Manhattan, but he's only in Manhattan for 40 minutes of the movie. The next thing is actually when they get to New York, they let Rennie get taken by these dudes to potentially be raped and murdered. Like, okay, let's then split up in a city we don't fucking know, where obviously we just ran into a couple dudes that are threatening to rape and murder us. Let's just leave her and see what happens. Let's just go split off. Luckily, Jason was there to save the day, but Like, what the fuck, man? And this one was the last big, like, logical mindfuck for me. Jason gets run down by Rennie in the cop car, okay? And she keeps going, and she sees the vision of kid Jason. And she runs that over. But doesn't really run it over, and she runs into a wall. Nobody fucking asks why. They all just get out of the car like, oh, man, yeah, that sucks. And then Miss Van Dusen fucking dies, and nobody says anything. Why? Why is nobody talking about the fact that she just full throttled into a fucking wall? It doesn't make sense. There were a lot of other ones, but those ones were the ones that really hurt. It's like, come on. For my third and final entry in the bad column. Remember how a little bit ago I said I like Jason 90% of the time? Here's what I'm going to talk about the other 10% of the time. The first part of Jason that I didn't like was that early on, we see Jason. We see a little flashback of Jason, kid Jason, in the water, and he's drowning. And he has a full head of hair. And at that time, had no makeup effects on his face. No. And then later, we see kid Jason again on the ship. And he actually has some makeup on this time. But again, the long brown hair. No, that's not what he had. But then you get later in the movie, and they have the proper look for Jason. They have the eyes all messed up. He's bald with some straggly hair, making him look more like the original. One, it doesn't make sense to have two different versions of Jason. The Jason they used a little bit later in the movie, that made more sense. And then, after Jason reverts to being a kid again, we're going to talk about that in a second. After Jason reverts to being a kid again, he has the long brown hair again. There's nothing good to say about that. It was a dumb decision. It was a dumb decision altogether to have the visions of Jason, but to have it be long brown hair, no hair, long brown hair, like inconsistency. And it didn't look good at all. Should have thrown it out the window. And speaking of Jason at the end of this movie, what the fuck is up with him demon screaming when Rennie throws the acid toxic waste on his face? He screams. Full on screams. In pain. This is Jason Voorhees, folks. He doesn't do that. Not this version of Jason. The zombie Jason. He doesn't do that. He doesn't feel pain. He gets shot. He's been shot in this movie and he was fine. And then he's all stumbling around. And then again in a little bit, he yells again. And then he talks. Not only does he talks like a little kid. And he begs for his mommy to save him and not let him drown. What the ever-living shit is that? If you were ever going to destroy any kind of fear you could have in Jason, turning him into a groveling, whiny child and then have him speak. I don't get how anybody signs off on making that Jason Voorhees. Who thinks that would be a good idea? Now we're going to shake that bullshit off and we're going to talk about one of the very few redeeming factors in this movie, and that is the kills. The first thing I noticed in the kills for this movie when I was doing the whole body count is that of the body count in this movie, 5 of the kills are not from Jason. The first kill is Wayne killing one of the guys that works on the ship. And then the next kill, if you catch it, is the 3 kids that drown in the restaurant. Ms. Van Dusen leaves them there, and then you find out later, oh yeah, the restaurant is flooded, which they don't even really show or really make sense of, but they're gone. See ya. And then later, as I mentioned before, Rennie kills Ms. Van Dusen. Kills her in the car. Boom, she's dead. She doesn't try to get out. Nobody tries to make sure she gets out. Dead. Boom. And then they just carry on. When Jason is the one doing the killing, they're pretty solid though. I mean, they're not all gems. They're really not. But they all kind of bear that Jason Voorhees, and even on top of that, Kane Hodder Jason Voorhees mark. The Ava kill and the Mr. McCullough kill are the ones that really kind of stood out for me as really having the Kane Hodder feel, because he kills them. You know, he picks up Ava, strangles her, and then he throws her down. And the same thing with Mr. McCullough, puts him in the barrel, struggling, and he's done. He just fucking tosses him aside. I love that extra zest that Kane Hodder puts on some of these kills. That extra, as I said before, dripping rage. I dig it. And just like in Part 7, the moment I saw it, I knew it was my favorite kill. So my award Favorite kill of the movie goes to Julius. Dude's going toe-to-toe with Jason, punching the shit out of him, which at first I thought was really stupid. So I'm like, dude, you're punching a hockey mask. Your hands are going to be fucked up. And I thought that they were going to completely gloss over it and we're supposed to buy into the fact that he's just punching the shit out of Jason. But no, he gets all clubber-langed and gassed, and then his hands are completely covered in blood. I dug that. I liked that they had him just going on adrenaline. And then when it comes time for the kill, it was awesome. Just grabs him by the shirt, one punch, knocks his head clean off, right into a dumpster. It's a great visual, great execution, great kill. Whew. Julius, fighting Jason Voorhees is not how you get ahead in life.
Oh, God. I'm sorry for that.
Now for my final thoughts on Friday the 13th, Part 8, Jason Takes a Boat. Jason Takes Manhattan. I really did not have a good time watching this movie. From the outset, the soundtrack, again, has that whole, I'm going to try to make you enjoy Jason, not be afraid of Jason, but enjoy Jason tone to it. Didn't like that. And then you have the opening credits that they drive home, you're in New York City. But then they're not in New York City. And then they finally get to New York City, which they nailed the vibe and look of. That was fine. But for a movie that was Jason Takes Manhattan, there's a lot of different choices that should have been made. And none of them were made properly. I didn't enjoy it. I just didn't. I didn't really care about anybody. Some of the subplots were okay, but really overall, it didn't make sense. Jason all of a sudden getting on a boat, and the boat going to Manhattan. Like I said, sure, that's the way you could get him to Manhattan, but you didn't need to take Jason to Manhattan. And if you're going to do it, there are other smarter ways to do it. So that, on top of all the poor Jason choices, on top of all the bads that I said in this video, I did not have a good time so far. I think it might be at the bottom of my list, unfortunately. Which sucks because if you've watched my reviews for 6 and 7, you know that I was going into this with high hopes. I liked 6. I liked 7. 8, shit on my dreams. And just a real quick question of the day. Do you find any redeeming factors for Jason Takes Manhattan? As you know, my only one really is Jason and how he kills people. Was there anything in here that you guys like? Hit the comments. Let me know. I'm very curious because I couldn't find anything else. And as much as I didn't like Part 8, I'm hoping that means that there's nowhere else to go but up for Jason Goes to Hell. I know we get the Freddy Krueger tease at the end, but we'll see. Please be better. My review for Jason Goes to Hell will be up on Thursday, but while you're waiting for that, I have reviews for all the rest of the series so far. They're in the description below, and I also have a couple other reviews that I've done that are not Friday the 13th related. Go check those out as well. And while you're down there, I have links to my Instagram and Twitter. They're both at @TheDaveCave_. I post over there when I'm not posting here, and that is going to do it for me today. Thank you so much, as always, for stopping by the Dave Cave. I will see you all on Thursday, but until then, take care.